Hey everyone, Sam here, otherwise known as FPL Pricey. I'm back from my holiday in Turkey, and -4 could be loading, so let's take a look at my team selection ahead of Game Week 6. So first up, let's have a look at my performance from Game Week 5, and it's probably one to forget for a lot of managers in the community at the moment. 40 points for me, and I was feeling pretty gutted about it. It's a pretty low score, but when I started looking at the average scores around the community, I did feel slightly better. It was a red arrow, but I don't think I've lost too much ground on the crowd, and I think if you scored anywhere between 30 to 45, 50 points, you're not really losing too much ground, so I wouldn't panic too much. It's just one of those weeks where not many things go our way as FPL managers. So like I mentioned, I'm down to 1.3 million now. So again, a little bit frustrating to be in the 7 figures going into Game Week 6, but it's still by no means a nightmare scenario. I've got 2 free transfers to use, and the team in Game Week 5, I think there are some positives to look at, but mainly it was just a pretty dull game week for all involved. In goal, I didn't really make any decision. It was Turner all day long over Onana, 2 points for each, so it wouldn't have really mattered either way. In the defence, Chilwell getting 0 points, coming off the bench for 10 minutes and getting the yellow card was incredibly frustrating. And I think he's a player that I'm going to be slightly cautious about owning for the game weeks to come. That we'll discuss in just a little while. A doggy 2 points. The fixtures do stiffen for a couple of game weeks before Luton in game week 8. So maybe there's a question mark over him, but I think personally I can probably just hold him on the bench or maybe even start him in one of the two next couple of game weeks. Saliba 6 points. That did really help me out. I wasn't expecting that clean sheet for Arsenal the way the rest of the game week was going, but luckily they held on, so Saliba did get that 6-pointer, which was really valuable for me. Moving into the midfield, Saka also getting 6 points. Arsenal did help me out that little bit, but Saka's effective ownership being around 85% at the rank I was at means that didn't really help me out too much anyway. The rest of the midfield all blanked, so 2 points for Rashford, Foden and Sterling, and then Maddison only getting 1 point and that yellow card in a fixture that you really expected Maddison and Tottenham to do really well in was very, very frustrating indeed. So overall, the midfield was a little bit of a catastrophe, but Saka did save my blushes just a little bit towards the end of the game week. Up front were the majority of my returns. Obviously, Haaland getting the goal. I don't know how he didn't score more than he did. I think if you captain Haaland over Son this game week and you only got the goal out of him, I think you can feel a little hard done by. I certainly do. The XG that he got, only 7 players in the whole of FPL this season have got that XG overall so far, whereas Haaland did it in 1 game, only getting 1 goal out of it. I do feel slightly hard done by there, but a goal's a goal and he did get a return, so I'm fairly happy that I captained him over most of the other choices in the game this game week. Watkins getting yet another return. I think that's his 4th of the season so far, but yet again, no goals for him, so maybe there's a question mark over whether or not he is the second striker of choice at the moment, and when I come to my transfers, maybe there could be a move to be made there. Anyway, let's take a look at how I'm set up for game week 6, and I think there's a few transfers I want to try on for size. So as I mentioned, there are a few transfers I've got in mind, and luckily I've got 2 free transfers this game week. I'm actually looking at 1 transfer in each of the outfield positions, so 1 in defence, 1 in midfield and 1 up front. I'll go through those specific transfers in just a minute's time, but for now let's take a look at how I'm setting up in the back line. So I'm choosing to start Onana over Turner. I think that's a pretty easy choice at the moment. Burnley away. I don't think it's a great shout for a clean sheet right now. Man United don't look like keeping a clean sheet in too many matches, but I think Onana represents a better chance of a clean sheet than Turner does away at Man City. Turner will probably get a few saves, but Man City will most likely score a bundle of goals at home at the Etihad against Nottingham Forest, so I think that's a fairly comfortable choice. In defence, Chilwell to start against Aston Villa. Now, that is a home game, so in theory, I would be pretty happy with starting Chilwell, but like I mentioned, he's not starting week in, week out at the moment, only getting 10 minutes off the bench. And the way Pochettino is setting up, he seems pretty determined to start that back 4. And he even said in the post-match press conferences that he doesn't want his fullbacks to be bombing forward too much. He wants them to be much more disciplined. And Colwill started at left back in game week 5. So I think there is an argument that Chilwell isn't a lock in our teams at the moment, and I think if he's going to start anywhere, it seems more likely that he'll probably start left wing for Chelsea, but obviously there's competition for that spot. He's not a natural left winger, so it's actually pretty risky to bet on him starting week in, week out, but when he does start left wing for a defender, if he gets any attacking returns or a clean sheet, that is going to be absolute gangbusters. So I'm hesitant to sell him, because if he does start and if he does regain that spot at left wing, he could be absolutely phenomenal. But for a 5.7 million defender, that's fairly premium for a defender. That's a lot of money to be spending. And there are other options cropping up now around that sort of price point that I might prefer, which I'll go into in just a minute. It might mean that Chilwell might not be a lock in my team any longer. A doggy away at Arsenal. Now, that's not a great fixture. In an ideal world, I wouldn't start in this game week. But on the bench, I've got Cabor at home against Wolves, but I really don't like Luton at the moment. I think that they are the easy fixture, and Wolves have scored in all but one of their games so far. The game that they didn't score, they were unlucky not to, and that was away at Man United on the opening game week. So I think Wolves will probably score against Luton, and I don't back Luton for too many goals, so Cabor is probably going to be on my bench this week. I know a few people are starting him, good luck to you, but I don't really think that he's a great option at the moment. I'm even slightly hesitant on whether or not to start him in game week 7 when he's got a double, so I'm not too sure about starting him this game week. Saliba on the bench against Tottenham at home. I think Tottenham score. I think it will be a fairly high scoring game, and Saliba's attacking upside is quite low, so I think I'm pretty certain to have him on the bench. A doggy on the pitch, I think Arsenal will score, much like Tottenham will, but I think a doggy represents that slightly better chance of an attacking return, so I prefer to start him over Saliba. And that's the logic that I'm applying to that decision-making process. Estupiñán at home against Bournemouth, I don't think much needs to be said about that. Great fixture at home. Estupiñán should start, and he's obviously a great attacking defender, so very happy to start him. But like I mentioned, I'll probably be looking at one transfer in the back line, which I'll go into in just a moment. So moving on to the midfield, and even though a lot of them disappointed in game week 5, I don't think many of them, if any, are easy sells this game week. Starting from left to right, Burnley away for Rashford. I think that's a great fixture for Rashford. He's actually, in my opinion, looked really good recently. He looks much more comfortable on that left wing, and even though he didn't return against Brighton, I think he was unlucky not to, and a lot of people have been having a bit of a go at him because he's been a bit selfish, but I actually quite like that in a wide forward. I think that actually breeds attacking returns in FPL, and even though it might not be the best solution for Man United, I think for Rashford in particular, he's unlikely to lose his place. He'll keep going for goal, he'll keep cutting inside, he'll keep being selfish, so I still like him, and he'll probably be my vice-captain as it stands this game week. Moving across to Foden, at home to Nottingham Forest, I think that's a great fixture. There are a lack of attacking options at City at the moment. Pep says they've got a lot of injury concerns, so I think it's pretty likely that he continues to start, and any attacking option for City at home against Nottingham Forest I do quite fancy. Moving across to Saka at home to Tottenham, I don't think there's any chance of me getting rid of him at the moment. Got a goal and an assist in Europe in the Champions League on Arsenal's long-awaited return in the midweek against PSV, so I'm very happy to keep him, and obviously he's on penalties as well. The fixtures aren't great in the medium term, but Saka is still a fantastic option, and I'm looking at using him as a make weight for someone like Son Heung-min in game week 8, so for the time being I'm very happy to hold him until that point. Maddison against Arsenal. Now, Maddison's a really interesting one. Now, I really like him, and I think he's a fantastic attacking option for Spurs, and Spurs are also, in turn, a fantastic attacking team at the moment. However, in midfield at the moment, there are a number of options I really like the look of, and a few of them have much better fixtures in the short term than Tottenham and Maddison do. So Maddison is potentially a player that I think that I could gain upside from selling in this game week. And don't worry, I'm very aware of the Luton game in game week 8, and I would be looking at bringing him and probably even another Spurs midfielder back for that game week, and I have a plan to make that happen. But in the short term, against Arsenal away from home, and then against Liverpool at home, I think there's a decent chance of attacking returns, but the players I'm looking at bringing in, I think represent better value for money. One of them in particular, I think, has two great fixtures in game week 6 and game week 7. And then Maddison could come back in game week 8 without even taking another hit. and I think that that might be the play for me. So again, I'll go into my transfers in just a moment's time, but that's the logic I'm applying with James Maddison and why he might be a player that I'm looking at maybe getting rid of this game week and attacking the fixtures for the next 2 game weeks. Sterling is the other player that I was flirting with getting rid of. Whilst I was on holiday, I was thinking about this a lot, and Sterling is a player that has been really disappointing since I brought him in. However, when you look beyond the actual returns he's gotten and look at the underlying data and the attacking positions he's been getting himself into, I think he can count himself very, very unlucky not to have gotten points in the last 2 game weeks. And Chelsea's fixtures after Aston Villa in game week 7 and game week 8 are really, really good, going up against Fulham and Burnley. Now, I think Sterling is a player that I could get rid of this game week, and I would feel fairly comfortable to do it against Villa, but then I probably want a Chelsea player back in my side for the next 2 game weeks before I look at wildcarding. And I think if I get rid of him now, it might be a differential that I'd be missing out on in game week 7 and game week 8, and maybe holding him just for the moment to see if Chelsea can click into gear and can start returning on their underlying XG, which, by the way, is very, very good at the moment. I think Sterling could be a little bit of a differential pick whilst others are looking at selling him. I might hold on to him and just hope that he starts returning in the next couple of game weeks. So going into my forward line, no surprises who my captain's armband is on this game week, and it is Erling Haaland yet again. Nottingham Forest at home, no surprises there. I think we can move past that. I don't think there are too many other options. So Erling Haaland is a lock as a captain this game week, no matter what. Watkins, on the other hand, Chelsea away from home, I don't think is a bad game to have for Aston Villa. I think they'll probably have a decent chance of getting attacking returns there. But Watkins no longer looks like the talismanic pick at Villa. He looks almost like a decoy player, with Diaby making those runs in behind, even Matty Cash as well, making those runs into the box. Watkins is occupying the defenders, getting a lot of the attention from the defenders that he's going up against, which means that he is quite often getting marked out of the games or being used as a hold-up play kind of man to play off of, to get to Diaby, to get to Cash, to get to Bailey as well. So I'm a little bit nervous about Watkins' prospects for goals rather than just assists over the next few game weeks. And there is one attacker that in particular I think could represent great value for money in the next couple of game weeks that I think when you look at Aston Villa's fixtures, I think there is enough upside there, especially when you look at the money that I could be saving by buying this attacker to make that a worthwhile transfer. So without further ado, let's take a look at the moves that I'm looking at making in game week 6. So here are the transfers I'm looking at making ahead of game week 6. And it does look like I'm going to be taking a -4 this game week. And I think, barring any late team news, I'm pretty set on what I'm going to be doing. James Maddison, so from the top, James Maddison looks like the first player that I'm looking at getting rid of. And I really do still like him as a pick, and I think this is going to be a common theme in FPL this season where we're getting rid of inarguably good players and good picks that could return against anyone, but if the fixtures aren't quite there for them, looking at the upside on players that are arguably as good at FPL assets. In this case, it's Bryan and Mbeumo, who are a bit cheaper and also have better fixtures over the next 2 game weeks. I think chasing that upside will be worthwhile in the short term, especially when I'm looking at dead ending in a few game weeks' time. Bryan and Mbeumo is on penalties as well, so that is one benefit over James Maddison. Has the fixtures, Everton and Nottingham Forest in the next 2, I think is inarguably better than Arsenal and Liverpool, whichever way you cut it. And of course, that million saving does enable moves elsewhere. So I think that is my first move this game week, and unless I hear that Phil Foden, for example, isn't starting in game week 6 against Nottingham Forest, he'll probably be the player that goes. If Foden isn't starting, I'll probably switch that to keep Maddison and get rid of Foden, and the rest of these moves will probably remain fairly similar. Moving past that one upside pick I want to chase in the next few game weeks is Kieran Trippier, and the one way that I can comfortably make that transfer is by getting rid of Ben Chilwell. Now, obviously, I've saved a little bit of money by getting in Mbeumo over Maddison, but I also need to save that little bit more money to make sure that I can make moves in a couple of game weeks time. And if I'd done Saliba out instead of Chilwell, which was a player I was looking at getting rid of, the fixtures aren't great for Saliba. They are better for Chilwell, but I think on balance of things, I prefer to get rid of Chilwell, who I'm not certain will keep starting, especially if he's going to be used in the left wing position. There's plenty of competition there, and I don't think there's any guarantee that he'll continue to start, especially in the easier games against Burnley and Fulham in game week 7 and game week 8. I want to be able to guarantee a starter, especially at the price point Chilwell's at, and Kieran Trippier, with some great fixtures over the next 3 or 4, has attacking upside as well. I do want to chase that upside in Kieran Trippier. Hopefully he's nailed enough to have confidence in over the next few game weeks, even for the hit over Ben Chilwell. So it's a tough decision to get rid of Chilwell. I don't think he's an easy sell by any means, and I think it's still fairly likely that he gets decent minutes in the next 3 or 4 game weeks. But I think there is a chance that they'll be reduced, and I don't want to take that risk when I'm looking at other players in my team that I think need to be manoeuvred. I don't really want to be falling back on Chilwell to only get 10 or 15 minutes in a single game week. I kind of want to just cut that problem out of my side for now and figure that out on my wildcard, whether or not he's a good pick moving forwards in the short term, especially because the 2 games against Burnley and Fulham are away from home. I actually don't mind getting rid of him too much. And then if he returns in the next couple of game weeks, and if he looks like he's going to be nailed, then fantastic. I can jump back on him on a wild card. And because he's a bit of a cash cow, I would like to get rid of him instead of Saliba, so I've got enough money in the bank to make manoeuvres in a couple of game weeks time as well. Moving on to the final transfer, I think this is probably the simplest one of the lot, and I almost wish I made this transfer earlier in the game week. Alvarez is a player that I'd love to have, but I think I can just about hold off on making that move until Saturday, when I get confirmation, hopefully, that he is in the starting 11. If I don't hear he's in the starting 11, as long as I don't hear that he's not in the starting 11, I will probably still bring him in anyway. But I'm hoping I get that team news just to lock in that transfer and to make things a little bit simpler for me. Alvarez is a player that, as you will have seen, has been on my watch list for quite a few game weeks this season already, and I think it's finally time to make that switch from Watkins to Alvarez. Watkins could return in any game week, and I think it's very important to note, with all of these transfers out, it could bite me, and I'm fully aware that for a -4 this is a risky move. However, I think Alvarez in particular is a player that is going to continue to hurt me week in, week out in a City side that regularly score 3+ goals. Alvarez looks like the link-up man with Haaland at the moment, and with KDB out, Alvarez seems to be the preferred choice to fill in that slot, and he is getting plenty of attacking returns, even though he's overperforming in a City side that have strikers like Haaland who continuously outperform their XG, game week 5 aside, of course. Having Alvarez feeding into him, hopefully even on a lower XA, he's going to still get a decent amount of assists, and obviously the odd goal here or there. He's still a great finisher as well. So I think Alvarez, with that million saving over Ollie Watkins, who isn't getting those goals at the moment, I think is a pretty simple move, especially with Nottingham Forest at home when Ollie Watkins goes up away at Chelsea. I think that is inarguably a better fixture overall, and over the next couple of game weeks, I prefer Alvarez as well. So that's the -4 I'm looking at. There are asterisks there. I think obviously if Foden doesn't start, and we know that before the deadline, then Maddison out probably changes to Foden out. And also, if I get any sort of news that Chilwell is definitely going to be a lock and he's going to be starting against Aston Villa and he looks like a good starter moving forwards, I might look at getting rid of Saliba instead of Chilwell. And if that happens, I'd probably look at bringing in Botman instead of Trippier, so I make sure I keep saving that money so I can make those upside moves in a couple of game weeks time without having to take a hit. So hopefully that makes sense, but for the time being, this is a structure I really like the look of. So let's have a look at how that fits into my game week 6 team selection. So there you have it, my team selection for game week 6. This is what it looks like with the transfers loaded. Trippier slots in defence alongside Udogie and Estupiñán. Kabor and Saliba on the bench. Now, Trippier away at Sheffield United, great fixture to start off, and for the next couple of game weeks looks really good as well. In midfield, I've swapped out Maddison for Mbeumo. Obviously, as I mentioned, if Foden we know doesn't start for whatever reason, that will probably shift very slightly. But overall, I really like the look of this 5 across midfield for game week 6, and then also for game week 7 it looks pretty decent as well. Up front, double City attack, so Haaland and Alvarez both at home against Nottingham Forest, and if we get the news that Foden also starts, I'll have triple City attack at home to Forest, which I think is going to be absolutely fantastic if we get news that all 3 of them start. So fingers crossed for that. Hopefully having that as a compound differential, having all 3 of them combined together to make a pretty differential attack. I really like the look of it. So fingers crossed that pays off. Overall, even with the hit, I really like this side. Let me know in the comments below what your side looks like ahead of Game Week 6. And if you've got any questions, please do post them below. I'll try and answer them all before the deadline. So there you have it, my Game Week 6 team selection with probably a -4 incoming. Please do remember to leave a like on the video if you enjoyed the content. And if you enjoy it enough, please do consider subscribing to the channel. It would be really, really appreciated. In the meantime, if you're around in London tomorrow, it would be great to see you at FPL Meets. Do drop me a message if you're thinking of going, or if you don't know what it is and want to learn more, all you need to do is message me in the comments below and I'll let you know what it is and where we're going to be meeting up. It should be absolutely fantastic fun. So do let me know if you're interested below, or if you're planning on going, do let me know and we can have a chat over a beer on Saturday. In the meantime, I wish you all the best ahead of Game Week 6 and I'll see you on the other side for the Game Week 7 content next week.